what is this thing that you cannot doubt? You say, I cannot doubt that I'm conscious, because if I were not conscious, I wouldn't experience anything. Whether it's a dream or not is secondary. Even to dream something, there needs to be a consciousness that is experiencing the dream. So there's a consciousness that's experiencing this world. I am that. Now, this is a very subtle and simple thing. Very subtle, very simple. Can you be conscious right now of the fact that you are conscious? And you cannot do that by thinking about it. That is an obstacle to that realization. You can only become conscious that you're conscious by letting go of thought. You don't, just for a moment, let go of thought. And what is it that remains of you when you let go of thought? But you haven't fallen asleep at all, but you've let go of thought. What is it that remains of you when you're not thinking? You're not thinking about the world, and you're not thinking about yourself. You're not thinking. Just a gap between two thoughts. Here, the gap opens up. And in that gap, you know that you are. You don't know how you know it, but you know that there is a presence, and you are that conscious presence. You know that. I'm already putting it into words, but the knowing is beyond words. You know that you are this presence. Now, you know that you are this presence, so you know, but you don't know anything else about this presence. There's nothing to know about this presence. And you don't know it as in the same way that you know a table or a dog or another human. That's not how you know this presence. You know the presence in you knows itself. You can sense your own consciousness. The consciousness knows itself. It's not an object, it's a subject. So another way of putting it is you realize that you are. And the realize that you are, I wouldn't say that you exist. That's a different term. Some philosopher and some spiritual teachers might use that term, but I would prefer not to say exist, because to exist is to stand out, to be some particular thing. You exist as a person, you exist. Ex means out. Exist comes from Latin to stand out. Something that exists is manifested. That's why it exists, it stands out. But this is prior to existence. The person that you are temporarily exists. But prior to this person, there is a timeless dimension of pure being or consciousness, where all you can say about yourself is, I am, if you want to say anything. And you wouldn't add anything to the I am. It's the realization of being between two thoughts. You can sense it. It's nothing to do with intellect or thinking. You don't need a high IQ. It doesn't matter whether your IQ is high or low, whether you're educated or uneducated. You can sense this beyond or what your personal history is, whether you're an abject failure in the eyes of the world, or you're the greatest thing that ever happened, the greatest VIP that ever happened in the world, makes no difference to this realization. This is the essence realization, and it's very, very simple. That's the kingdom of heaven that Jesus was talking about, that you cannot say, oh, it's over here or it's over there. You cannot, it's not an object, it's the subject, the eternal subject. So for a moment, and you don't need to say, okay, I'm going to meditate on it. You don't even need to meditate. Meditation is wonderful for those who practice it. But this realization can be there at any moment, like now, when you become conscious that you are conscious. And beyond that, you don't know much. You don't know anything. But you have gone deeper into yourself, and you have touched a deeper dimension, out of which all those things that can transform your life into something benevolent and fruitful emerge. They emerge from that deeper dimension of being itself or consciousness itself. Now, what are those things that make your life into something benevolent, your contribution to life into something benevolent and fruitful and even joyful? Those things are creativity, creative insights. They come from the deeper place of the unconditioned consciousness. So in other words, in order to be creative, you have to have some access to that dimension that is beyond thinking. Then perhaps the creative impulse comes. This is the evolution, the evolutionary process, your evolution and the evolution of this planet and life on this planet and the evolution of the universe are a single phenomenon. Your evolution is part of the evolution of the universe, the evolution of consciousness. And that comes, these are vast subjects. Each segment of this one could talk about for many hours. In order to have access to any kind of a creative spark in your life, you have to have some access to that essence dimension, the light of consciousness. Even if it's only brief. For a moment, the writers, the artists, even the scientists or the business persons, for a moment their mind stops, but they remain acutely alert and present. And then the mind starts again, and then their ability to bring some creative solution to whatever situation they encounter has suddenly increased dramatically. Another way of putting that is another thing that emanates from there and is inseparable from what I just called creativity. Creativity is a term that's rarely used these days, but it's of extraordinary importance if more humans do not find that in this world, then the evolutionary process is going to get much more difficult, but eventually it'll be fine. Wisdom. If humans cannot find that dimension, and where does it emanate? That same place. Wisdom emanates from that deeper place of presence, awareness, the light of consciousness. It comes from there. The modern world doesn't even know what to do with wisdom. But I don't know. It's unlikely that you'll ever hear wisdom anywhere on CNN or Fox News or New York Times. Probably they don't talk about wisdom. What is that wisdom? It's not intelligence. It's how to use the mind. The mind is, you can have very developed mind, but no wisdom. That's very dangerous. the more developed your mind becomes, which means your mind is separates. It sees isolated problems and tries to tackle isolated problems here and there. And this is the problem, and this is what we need to do to solve this problem. And at first it looks great. But because there's lack of wisdom, they have not looked at the problem in its totality. And so you have completely ignored the repercussions of what you're going to do to solve this problem, because you focused only on this problem. But what are the repercussions of the action that you took to solve this problem? You have not looked at the totality. And why have you not looked at the totality? Because you are trapped in your mind. The mind can only focus on the particular. It cannot see the whole. Wisdom can see the whole, but in order to see the whole of a situation, for a moment, you need to come to a cessation of thinking, and so that you have an awareness. And then you look at the awareness. The awareness looks at the problem. And then you suddenly see things, first non-conceptually, you see how everything is interrelated. And then you see, if I do this, the repercussions will be that. This is many times the world, the action taken to solve a problem, and this is important because the number of problems that we are facing collectively is increasing. We need wisdom to solve. If without wisdom, every action we take to solve a particular problem will actually make it worse. Even if it solves that problem, it will have created 2 or 3 or 4 other even bigger problems. So wisdom is of extraordinary, and wisdom emanates from that place of the realization of yourself as that spacious space, that space of awareness, of presence. Thought subsides. So it's not only creativity and wisdom that emanate from that place. All the things that make, as I said before, all the things that make life fruitful and make you into a benevolent human being. What also emanates from there is empathy with other humans, empathy with other life forms. The ability to have compassion emanates to speak, because you're no longer trapped in your exclusive personal sense of identity. You cannot have empathy and compassion when you're trapped in this personal, exclusively personal sense of self. Then all you need to do is protect this ultimately fictitious identity. And anybody who is engaged in protecting or enhancing attempting to enhance this ultimately fictitious identity, this person cannot have empathy, cannot have compassion. It's not impossible, no matter how many religious books they read, they can't. So it's empathy, compassion, and ultimately love. Love, which is, of course, these are all connected. They are, one could almost say, they are aspects of the realization of being, of your essence identity. So they are enhanced creativity, wisdom, empathy, compassion, and ultimately love. Now, love not in the conventional sense, which is egoic, which says, I want you and I need you. Don't you dare leave me, and don't you dare disappoint me or betray me, and I'll get really angry. Not that kind of love, but a love that comes from the realization of being, when you realize the yourself as the light of consciousness, you can sense that same light in every other being, even beyond their personality. The personality may be, even if the personality is obnoxious, as many personalities are, even if the person is very difficult, and many people, as you might have experienced, in that many people are difficult. In fact, for many humans, their main problems in life come from other people. So people are very difficult. And many personalities are obnoxious. And yet even there, yes, you see the personality and the conditioned entity, but beyond the personality and the conditioned entity, you can sense the same beingness that you sense in yourself. There's a light of consciousness in every human, even if it might be veiled, heavily veiled, concealed by heavy conditioning. And in some people, I must admit, the light is very deeply hidden, very deeply in some, in others less deeply hidden. In many, the light shine, even periodically, sometimes it shines through more and then it's obscured again. There are other humans where it's so hidden that it might be even hard to sense it, but you can, if you sense it deeply within yourself, you can, and I have experienced occasionally in my life meeting very difficult people, including, on various occasions, mentally disturbed people, meeting them and for a moment sensing their consciousness by sensing my consciousness. It's the same consciousness. Sensing that, and for a moment I've experienced, I'm not going into detail here, a deeply disturbed person for a few minutes suddenly becoming extremely present and conscious, totally freed of their paranoid, in this case, paranoid delusions, completely free suddenly. As if the heavy clouds had suddenly parted. So there's a healing effect that you can have on other people, never in the sense that you have some kind egoic identity that says, I'm going to heal the world. That's not how it works. Or then you meet somebody and immediately you tell everybody what's wrong with them and says, but I can heal you. That's all ego, so I don't need to go there. You're not doing anything. As the Course in Miracles says, a healer does not heal. He lets healing be. He lets healing be. And be is kind of the key word here, because that's how it happens through the realization of being, the realization of consciousness. And so then the essence then is this realization, then the way in which you meet or face the problems of this world, the difficulties of this world, whether they be of a personal or collective nature, changes, which means your entire reality changes, because your reality is not what happens to you ultimately. That's not your reality. Your reality is how you react or how you face the state of consciousness with which you face what's happening around you.